Have you ever wondered how successful people are able to let go of things and move on from even really dire or terrible or angering circumstances? We're going to talk about what to do about negative emotions today. And I have to be honest, this is coming from a very authentic place because right before this, I just recorded the best podcast episode of my life. It was 35 minutes long and only 6 minutes of it got recorded because my editing software crapped out on me and I don't know what happened, and I furiously sent an email to the tech team and I was like, yo, I have spent thousands of dollars on this software. Why is it not working? And so I can literally feel the heat in my body right now of how angry I am. And so I'm turning this into something for good that can help you, because it literally was the best podcast of my life. And so today we're going to talk about how to reframe these negative emotions. And we'll start here. If you're new here, I'm Coach Megan, and this is the #1 pageant podcast in the country, in the world actually now, the Powerhouse Podcast, where we talk about mostly mindset strategies that will help you win your pageant and win in life. So let's dive right in. So what a lot of people don't know, as a great place to start today, is that people operate with 3 core emotions. There are more than that, of course, but most people have one of these 3 core emotions: anger, fear, or shame. Now, if you've been around here for a while and you've listened to several of the other episodes, you guys know that I speak many different personality tests, but one of my favorite is the Enneagram. And if you have studied the Enneagram personality type test, then there are 9 total personality types. And so with these 3 core emotions, there are 3 of those personality types that really fit into each of these. And they're called the heart triad, the head triad, and the gut triad. So I happen to be an Enneagram 8, which is in the gut triad, and 8s, 9s, and 1s within that triad feel anger. They express it differently, but they primarily feel anger as like their go-to emotion when they're having a big emotion, shall we say. And then 2s, 3s, and 4s live in the shame world when they are either unhealthy, like I call in the basement of their personality, or they're having really big emotion. And then 5s, 6s, and 7s can live in the anxiety and fear world. And so this is really important to know, because as we become more emotionally intelligent people, as we become more successful people, we're able to actually identify those emotions. And I call it growing our emotional filter. So think of it as a true like water filter that we want to get bigger, so that bigger molecules, bigger particles can come through that filter, rather than we're all born with really the understanding of only a few emotions, even through nature and nurture, because most households only show about 5-10 emotions that they actually communicate. And maybe you're raised in a household that never said, I'm sad, I'm disappointed, I'm whatever, right? It was just like anger or fear or joy. And that might be it. Even if you have a pretty healthy household, like I would consider myself growing up in a really healthy household. And yet even still, I don't think that we identified many more emotions than I would say like humor, joy, anger, maybe disappointment. But other than that, like I actually had a pretty small emotional vocabulary. And part of my testimony, if you guys don't know, after I went through a pretty abusive situation and a narcissistic relationship over a half decade ago, it really bottomed out my ability to understand those emotions. And so a lot of that came out in anger until I was just so numb that I didn't feel any emotions at all. So I'm very passionate about this and passionate about teaching you guys this, because it is such an important tool to understand our emotions, not so that we can be driven by them, because we have lordship over our emotions, but also God has given us our emotions, both happy and sad and in between, because they're not something to run away from, but we also don't want them to control us and for us to feel like we can't process them. So I do want to say that just because something is your personality type bent, it doesn't mean that you're stuck there. It doesn't mean it's a curse. It doesn't mean, oh, you have a right to just say, oh, I'm a hothead, or I just live inside of my head. Like fear is just the way that I am, or anxiety is just the way that I am, or shame is just the way that I am. The Bible says that we have the mind of Christ. So all of that respectfully is BS, because we are called to a higher standard as Christians, and we're called to a higher standard. And if God said that we're supposed to have something, then he's also created the pathway to having that. And what is so proof of that, and we talk all about state change, state is like your emotional state in our coaching, is like even 5 minutes into this, I already in my physiology feel better, about 50% from the anger that I felt starting this podcast. But as just a baseline, my favorite Enneagram test is yourenneagramcoach.com. It's a Christian couple that runs it, Beth and Jeff Jones. They're amazing. I've had them on the podcast. It's way earlier. I think it was episode like 44. I have this embedded into my brain, 44, 47, something like that. Back in, around 2020, I think. And we talked all about it. So if you have other thoughts about Enneagram, or you're like, I think it's new age or whatever, then either just don't listen to this episode, totally fine. Or if you're willing to be educated about it, I would literally never lead you guys into something new age, because absolutely not. So anyways, back to kind of these buckets of fear and anxiety, shame and anger. Again, this doesn't mean that this is something that like owns you, but it is helpful to understand that when you might be experiencing stress, fight or flight, a time of great pressure, you have finals coming up, you have a pageant coming up, you're up for a promotion, you have a makeup, a breakup, these different things, major life events. When you are feeling squeezed, naturally you have parts of your personality that are God-given, but when they are unhealthy, you might feel these emotions, and it's important to know how to work through these things. Now, some people say that anger is actually a secondary emotion, and I'm inclined to agree, because if even I'm looking at my own history, if I even look within myself even right now, like I feel anger, like I feel heat in my body, rapid heartbeat, sweating a little bit, and all of that. But if I really look under that anger, and that's a great question to ask yourself, okay, under that shame, what do I feel? Under that anxiety, what do I feel? Under that fear, what do I feel? Under that anger, what do I feel? It's typically like a different emotion. And that's where I like to balance that against if you study like the energetics chart of emotions, like shame is a very low, call it vibrational Hertz frequency emotion, whereas like happiness and joy and excitement and contentment and ecstasy and intimacy and these different things are like way up here, vibrating way higher. And this is part of the explanation of like why, if you've met somebody and you just felt like you got each other and you were like playing off of each other, or like literally they call it like vibing, it's because there are vibrational Hertz frequencies to certain emotions that they've actually studied. And they've studied that you can sense people's emotional like field like 9 feet away. And so that is a real thing, is my point. But it's also important because I'm thinking, okay, what's underneath this anger? It was actually disappointment. It was frustration. It was feeling stupid. It was these different things, because I'm like, oh my gosh, this stupid technology. Am I dumb? Could I have done something different? So there's all these other emotions that are underneath of that anger. And when I actually look at those things, I'm able to bring that from a place of just my amygdala like running crazy, being like, this is just anger. If you've ever seen the movie Inside Out, I just watched Inside Out 2 last week. It was great. And instead of just that, I'm able to bring that to my frontal lobe and actually think, okay, let's think this through. What's going on? What is this? What is this not? What am I making this mean? What story am I telling myself about this thing? And a lot of times if we resist the emotion, it actually just persists. They've proven that with panic attacks, that if people just like, and I'm not giving you mental health advice at all, I'm just telling you a study that I've read and something that's worked for me. If you resist, like, don't feel the thing, it actually gets bigger, as opposed to, they say, watch your thoughts and emotions like a cloud that are just rolling by. Then before you know it, it'll be time for a new thought, a new emotion, because you have thousands and thousands every single day. Okay. So I really wanted to talk about these things in the same way of like shame or anxiety. One of the best ways that I like to catch whether something is a story I'm telling myself and an emotion rather than an actual circumstance, and learning how to coach myself through this. And really what successful people do is see if it's attached to an I am. So I'm feeling this feeling and therefore I am blank, right? I am stupid. Or I always say should equals shame. Don't should on yourself. So I should have known this. Or fear, again, I'm taking a circumstance and now I'm sending it into the past or into the future rather than just looking at the present moment and able to analyze it for what it is. Like I could either say this is a water bottle, or I could say glass water bottles are good, glass water bottles are bad. And that's changing something from the circumstance of the matter to actually telling a story about the circumstance. And that's where we can get ourselves in trouble. Number one, what successful people do with negative emotions and how they handle these negative emotions is they've learned how to reframe them into a powerful or a positive meaning. They don't allow their minds to go unguarded. The Bible talks about guard your heart above all else with all diligence, for out of it is the wellspring of life. So how I think about that is, well, let's look at the opposite. If you don't guard your heart and your mind with all diligence. And actually that heart, the word heart actually means mind as much as it means heart, because Greek and Hebrew meanings have way more meanings than just one English word. I won't get into all that, but it means a lot of different things. So heart and mind. So I think of it as like putting a guard on the outside of your head and your heart. So if we don't do that, it turns it from a wellspring to a swamp really quickly. So if you've ever felt like, oh my gosh, I'm just swamped with emotion, I'm swamped with overwhelm, chances are it's because you have not been properly guarding what you've allowed to take a permanent residence inside of your head and your heart. And now it is creating an identity and a belief system that is clogging the actual identity that God has for you. And then with that, it shifts your body into a stuck mode. And that leads me to number 2. So successful people, when they are in a negative emotion, they move their bodies to shift their state. So this is something so powerful. I've talked about this a lot on the podcast, but my husband is one of those people, like we have 9 inches of snow right outside. Yesterday was 80 and sunny. Today, a tree blew down our entire playground in our backyard. And that's going to be a fun bill to pay. And there is so much snow outside, I cannot even describe to you. And there was like icicles and like trees hitting my windows, waking me up every single hour last night. My baby slept through the night, amazingly. But what did my husband do? I'm going to the gym. I was like, the plows have not come and there's a foot of snow and you have a Tesla. And he's like, I have a Tesla. I'm going to figure it out. Whatever I have to do, I'll walk home. I don't care. I was like, there's no stopping this man. So he did, texted me. He's safe. He went to the gym, got a great workout, came home. That tenacity, and he knows that to get through what God has for him and to play the game at the level that God has for him, he has to move his body first. And so that's a way that he accesses a new level of thinking and to uproot from the emotion of even, oh, I'm just going to chill today. No, if he's fighting for our family to protect and provide and do that at a 1% level, that's why most men are not willing to do that. Most people are not willing to do that because they say they want to be a 1%er, but when the circumstances aren't perfect, they fold like a cheap chair. I'm not saying that you should go do that because I was like, we have workout equipment at home. And Landon was like, I hate that. I'm going to go to the gym. I was like, okay, boo, like whatever. Love the energy, right? But emotion is created by motion a lot of times. So that's where, again, just even physically uprooting yourself from where you had the emotion. I probably should have gone downstairs and made myself a cup of tea and then come back and did this episode, but we didn't do that. We just rammed on through because that's my personality. So anyways, but it really can help you, like going for a walk. One thing that I do, especially with ADHD, is I have a timer on my phone that helps me work in 25-minute increments. So I do 25 minutes on, 5 minutes off, and I keep a timer going on my screen. And then it beeps, and then I have a 5-minute break. I get up and I move myself. I walk. I put my coffee in the microwave for the 17th time. Can I get a witness? Anybody else like that? And then we reset. I do 5 rounds of that, and then we take a little bit more of a break. It's really helpful, and the power of focus as well as moving your body will help you to change your state like so much. The third thing that really successful people do is they ask questions while they are in that state to help change their focus. So we've talked about this a little bit, but where focus goes, energy typically flows. And energy is a very interesting thing, like we talked about with the energetics chart even earlier, which I encourage you to Google. But a great question is even, okay, how can I grow from this? So my gut reaction, and I've trained my brain pretty well, obviously over the years, but I even had those like carnal thoughts of, this sucks, I want to yell at the tech people, and you just wasted 30 minutes of my time, and a lot of you language. And a lot of that is stepping out of what successful people do, which is operating at cause rather than effect of their life. So successful people operate at cause, which is taking 100% responsibility and understanding that life happens through them, not to them, right? So in that moment, my energy wanted to shift into victim mode of, this wasted my time and all these different things. And it's a fact. I wasted 30 minutes of my life, and time is precious, and I was supposed to be done working 2 minutes from now. And now I'm going to get 1 fewer podcast done today because the stupid software didn't work, right? And that's frustrating. And I hate that because my time is the most valuable thing in my life after my family, because I want to spend more time with my family, right? So when something steals my time, it ticks me off. But the fact is, like, I can't change it. I can't get it back. I did what I could do. So I asked better questions. Okay, can I send an email to the tech team? Is there any possible way this saves somewhere else on my computer? Do I want to just go ahead and while I'm in the energy, redo it right away? Or do I want to redo it later? Do I want to redo it at all? Do I want to actually turn this into something else? Do I want to turn it into a 2-part series? Like, immediately I've trained my brain to just start asking questions to figure out the result that I want rather than just accepting defeat and being like, this is stupid and life sucks and blah, 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 blah. Because it's not going to do anything, right? I made a decision. Maybe the tech team can find it. They've been able to find things in this particular software before in the ether of the cloud. So I'm going to wait one day. And if I don't have a response within one day, I'm going to record it again tomorrow. But I don't have the energy to do it again today, and I don't want to fake it. So I'm just going to do it tomorrow when I'm in a better mood. That's the decision I've made, right? And then during that time, I'm going to go work on the 4,000 other things that I have to get done. So I still have a sense of productivity during that time frame, which is totally fine. Okay. With that, number 4 is they remove the emotion from their decision making. So being able to separate, again, thoughts, emotions, actions, results, which is one of my thinking frameworks that I teach my clients, is really important. So I make my decisions based on my goals, based on my principles, based on my beliefs and values, not based on the emotion in the state. In the same way that I don't treat people just based on the emotion that I'm feeling right now, I treat people with respect because of my belief that people are worthy of respect. So if you haven't quite learned how to do this yet, like just start today, right? So before reacting, pause and ask yourself a few questions and say, okay, is this emotion clouding my judgment? Am I acting out of emotion? Or what would my best self do in this moment to react and act properly in the way that I actually want to see this occurring? And then number 5, to close this out today, which is funny because this kind of flips everything that I just said on its head, is they actually use emotion as fuel for action. So with the anger you're feeling or with the whatever emotion that you're feeling in the moment, can you position yourself to actually fuel you even more towards that end goal with the desire to accomplish that thing, right? So you almost treat it like you're doubling down, and now you're treating the fact that this opposition, this thing that didn't work, this thing that came against you, treat it like an enemy in a good way where you're like, you know what? You're not going to have the best of me. I'm still going to finish this podcast. I'm still going to run this race. I'm going to fight through the pain. I'm going to fight through the disappointment. And what the power of doing all 5 of these things together is so powerful, because when you do hard things, it builds self-efficacy, which is trust with yourself. It builds self-confidence. It builds congruency. It builds trust with yourself. It further proves that we're not just like this tree that's just like spiny and has no roots and is just pulled by whatever emotion of the second or of the day we're currently feeling. And to know and be able to look at yourself in the mirror every single day and be like, we've got this, no matter whether I'm feeling up, I'm feeling down, I'm feeling purple or blue or green today, like we've got this. And when I say we're doing something, we're doing something. There is an energy and a conviction to that is very attractive and attracts success for sure. But that trust with yourself, like I'm trying to describe, but it's hard to describe what that feels like other than like an inner peace and a fire that just feels like life isn't happening to you. There's a sense of control, I think, that comes from that when you double down and you dig your heels in and when you do something hard. Have you ever just had a really long day of hard work, focus, whether that's like outdoor work, you clean up all the leaves and crap from the fall or whatever. Like when you just sweat a lot, or you do a super hard CrossFit workout, you try a new workout class, or you ask the person out and you're sweating and it was really scary, but they say yes. Like when you get out of your comfort zone and you do something just hard that was objectively difficult, it is impossible to not have a sense of pride within yourself. You're like, I did that. It was hard. I freaking did that. And so imagine if you continually start to make choices in your life like this and overcome these emotions and these circumstances, like what else do you think that you could brainwash yourself in a good way to believe that you could do? And that's what I want to leave you guys with today. So I already feel better. Thanks for coming to my personal therapy session and watching myself coach myself through this anger. And it looks like now I have another podcast to do. So thanks guys for watching, and we'll see you next week.